Okay, welcome everybody. I apologize. Hadn't realized we were live. I'm going to give it another few seconds to get everybody in. We are expecting at least 200 attendees, if not more. So let us wait. As we wait, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, you are more than welcome to do so. Um, and we've got close to 200, so I will begin. So welcome today to this webinar, which is examining artificial intelligence and sustainability and climate challenges, and how as Catholics we are called to respond and protect our common home. Let me now share my screen. Okay. Uh, Before we begin, we do have some housekeeping information. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. If you have questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat. In the chat, you can discuss amongst yourselves and have conversations, but remember to always be civil in the chat interactions. We always begin with prayer in our webinars. And today, as we pray, I ask that we lift Pope Francis in prayer as he's facing a major illness. We pray that Pope Francis heals quickly and that God guides the medical staff who are caring for him. As we center ourselves in this prayer that is adapted from a litany for faithful engagement with artificial intelligence, and it's very adapted. I do give you the link, though, there. When you receive the slides, you will have it. Let us center ourselves and remember that we are always in the presence of God. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. God, you created the heavens and the earth and the fullness thereof. All good gifts come from you. We praise you for the bounty of creation and for the gifts of energy, imagination, and skill to create technologies and bring them into existence. Open the eyes of our hearts to see how you are at work in us as we develop, deploy, and use these creative gifts. Holy Spirit, you're closer than the air we breathe. You illumine our minds with understanding. Help us to see the effects of our technologies on our neighbors, ourselves, and our relationships. Let us be guided by your commandment to love one another so that you will be our guide to wise use of AI. Holy Spirit, be our wisdom. Breathe life into our hopes that we may bear witness to you in creating and using AI. Give us restraint where needed to avoid destructive influences. Give us energy and strength to walk with you and channel the power of our minds and our technologies toward righteousness. Give us the mind of Christ in the defining moments of our engagement with AI. Lord, you are our rock and redeemer. Help us to love you as you have loved. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. This is a very timely webinar. Pope Francis has repeatedly spoken about the challenges and opportunities of the development of artificial intelligence. On January 29th, the Vatican published Antiqua Nova, and Céire will be speaking more about this. This is the note on the relationship between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. And in it, it states that it is crucial to know how to evaluate individual applications of AI in particular contexts to determine whether its use promotes human dignity, the vocation of the human person, and the common good. Just over a week ago, participants from over 100 countries, including the Vatican, signed an international pact pledging to develop AI in a way that is ethical, open, transparent, and safe. The Pope sent to the summit a message saying that we needed to ensure that AI, quote, connect become a powerful tool in the hands of those scientists and experts who cooperate in finding innovative and creative solutions that promote the eco-sustainability of the earth, our common home, and not to overlook the high consumption of energy associated with the operation of artificial intelligence infrastructures. It is important to note that the US was not a signatory of the final version of this agreement. In today's webinar, we will focus and evaluate AI in the context of the challenges it has on the protection of our common home and the promotion of human dignity. I am thankful to our three panelists for accepting the invitation to tackle this issue and to do so with the time constraints that we've put on them. This is a complex issue, and presenting it in 1 hour is going to be a challenge. I am going to drop the longer version of the bios in the chat once Céire starts speaking, and I have the ability to do that. But for now, I am quickly going to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist will be Céire Kealty. She holds a master's in theological studies and a Ph.D. in theology from Villanova University. She's a frequent commentator on culture and Christianity. She's going to ground us on Catholic theoethical perspectives on artificial intelligence. Following is Manan Donahue, who's a senior research associate at Brookings Metro, with expertise in environmental and social justice. He holds a master's degree in human geography and environmental governance from the University of Oxford and a bachelor's in resource economics from the University of Sydney. He will focus on the environmental justice aspects of AI. Scott Hurd will finish our panel presentation. He is Vice President for Leadership Formation with Catholic Charities USA and Chairperson of Catholic Climate Covenant's board. He has 26 years experience in ecclesiastical service at both national, diocesan, and parish levels, and he's earned degrees from the University of Richmond and Oxford University. He's going to wrap up the presentations with a tangible action that we as Catholics, people of faith, can make to reduce the environmental impacts of AI. So at this point, I am going to ask Céire to get us started.
Thank you so much, Paz. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to get my slides up in just one moment. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Céire Kealty, and I'm very excited today to provide a Catholic critique of AI. Just to note, this is not going to be an exhaustive presentation. While I'll be drawing from the teachings of the Catholic tradition to help us address AI ethical challenges, I'm hoping this presentation is one of many presentations and discussions and commentaries to come in weeks and months. I think this will grow ever more important for us within and beyond the Catholic Church. So here's how I plan to structure my remarks today. First, I'll say a word or two about what AI is, just very briefly. Then I'll spend a few minutes talking about the recently published Vatican document on AI. Following that, I'll raise some ethical concerns about AI that the Catholic tradition can help us think through. And finally, I will provide some takeaway points to sum things up. So let's begin. What is AI? When we say AI, or we talk about artificial intelligence, we're using a catch-all phrase to describe a group of technologies that processes information, imitates human thinking, and detects patterns in data for certain ends and outcomes. AI is used for things monumental and mundane, stellar and downright silly. You can use AI to generate images of Jesus on a skateboard, ask ChatGPT to write emails for you, and up until recently, you could ask an AI priest questions about Catholicism. Yikes. AI is expanding into many areas of our lives, and AI enthusiasts and proponents are hopeful that this tech can soon help us fight climate change, identify cancer early on, improve efficiency across numerous industries, and make life on Earth better. But of course, AI can be used for bad as much as good. As Pope Francis told the G7 summit last June, innovation is never neutral. And we need to be able to evaluate AI's means and ends and proceed with caution. and the church can help us in this endeavor. So as Paz briefly noted, on January 2025, the church weighed in on AI by releasing a Pope Francis approved document called Antiqua et Nova, Ancient and New, a note on the relationship between AI and human intelligence. I'm just going to speak a little bit about this document and show how it helps us think through AI and the challenges this technology raises. In this document, the church encourages advancements in science and technology, which I think is important to underscore. The church is not anti-science or anti-tech. But this document is also emphasizing that we have to evaluate these advancements and consider their implications. Through this kind of careful critique, the church hopes we can enact ways to mitigate risks, prevent harms related to AI, and ensure applications promote the common good. So one component of this document is comparing AI to human intelligence. And it gets a little bit theoretical, but I am going to spend one slide talking about it, just because I think it's helpful framing for us. As Antiqua et Nova explains, AI is an imitation of human intelligence. Human intelligence is an embodied faculty, so involving our body, our mind, and our soul, and it develops through creativity and through relationships with other people. AI is a tech. It's confined to a particular logical mathematical framework, and it's impressive, but it's developed by training on human creativity. It trains on us and our outputs. Human intelligence is shaped by divine love and our being made by God and in God's image and likeness. It has an essential contemplative dimension, and that's not meant to be lofty. At its best, human intelligence connects us to the true, the good, and the beautiful, which are ideals towards moral excellence beyond any utilitarian purpose. Ideally, human intelligence can be our pathway towards greater communion with other people and God. And while AI is a product of human intelligence, this orientation towards moral excellence is not built into AI. It's not the default. AI is a task performance machine. It is predictive, replicative, and relies on pattern recognition to function. AI systems skim sources online to conjure up content and mimic human intelligence. AI can be as utilitarian and selfish as its makers and users want it to be. AI systems, as the document explains, are not capable of moral judgment themselves. And this is where the church is concerned. So forgive another wall of text, but this is an important slide. While the church acknowledges its gratitude for technology's remedying of various evils and harms, it notes that not all tech advancements represent human progress. We should be proceeding with caution towards new and renewed developments, no matter how exciting they are or how much noise surrounds them. Ideally, tech developments should prioritize the pursuit of greater justice, fraternity, and humane social relations over just advancing for the sake of advancing. So in short, our tech developments should demonstrably benefit humankind, and ideally all of humankind, not just a particular subset. So we have to wonder, is the ultimate end of AI to benefit humankind? Well, I have my concerns. If you've read any of my articles on AI, you'll know that, but if not, that's okay. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and other AI acolytes and leaders have also shared their own concerns about AI, its potential catastrophic harms related to disinformation, the job market, and other areas. So when the masterminds behind these technologies are talking about the damages to human life, and yet are insistent that, well, we don't need to pause, we should just go full speed ahead, then you start to see how these technologies aren't always focused on moral excellence or justice. It's about advancement. So Antiqua et Nova goes on to raise different concerns and ethical quandaries of AI. I don't touch on all of them in this presentation. We just don't have time. But I do find it helpful towards the beginning of the document. This document references some resources in the Catholic tradition that are helpful for us to evaluate AI, including principles of Catholic social teaching. So for the unacquainted, Catholic social teaching is part of the social doctrine of the Church. It gives guidance on promoting peace, justice, and love in the world and addressing contemporary problems. So for the second half of my presentation, I will be focusing on evaluating some challenges to AI through a Catholic lens by drawing from this document, Antiqua et Nova, and also principles and themes of Catholic social teaching. Catholic social teaching. So I'm going to focus on, again, for the sake of time, 4 principles specifically. These are the 4 principles. First, we have stewardship of creation, which keeps in line with the theme of today's presentation and the ethos of Catholic Climate Covenant, who so nicely invited me to speak. Stewardship or care for creation is just that. We are asked to care for God's creation. We're meant to till the earth, to nourish it, and keep this in mind because it is God's. Another principal theme is human dignity, which is, according to the Church, the foundation of the moral vision of society. It's the idea that people have inherent worth and value that cannot be touched and chipped away, regardless of external circumstances, and this dignity should be protected. From human dignity comes another idea, that of the dignity of work, where through our labor, our dignity should be protected and enhanced. Work should afford us, ideally, safety, decent and fair wages, the ability to unionize, and other protections. And fourth and finally for today, we have the option for the poor and marginalized. And simply put, our priorities should be with the vulnerable. We should place the needs of those made marginal in our society over other groups and goals. So now I'm going to move into some challenges related to AI by starting first with environmental challenges. So when leaders talk about artificial intelligence, they often speak about the cloud and the AI on the cloud and cloud computing. And this can be kind of confusing and deceptive language for us because we start thinking about the sky and this transcendent idea. So AI is happening in a liminal space outside of the tangible world or something. In reality, AI systems are powered by tangible on-the-ground data centers that are typically installed in the central and western United States, and of course, other parts of the world. These data centers, which support AI systems and other technologies and online computing, are quite resource intensive. They use a lot of water, they use a lot of electricity, they use certain minerals that are not mined sustainably, and they release lead and other concerning outputs into the environment. Data centers are significant drivers of electricity demand growth in many reasons. According to Goldman Sachs' independent study, data centers will use 8% of US power by 2030, compared with 3% in 2022. And of course, this growth in power demand is going to require demands in new natural gas, new pipeline capacity in the coming years, and of course, growing emissions, which is not good. So the more that you hear about companies adding AI to their products, integrating them into their phones, their computers, into online banking, it's driving energy usage and emissions. So besides using electricity, AI also uses water, not just in powering data centers, but in training AI systems. To provide just a little bit of data here, Microsoft data centers have used 700,000 liters of water while training GPT-3, which is a chatbot, and Meta, formerly Facebook, used 22 million liters of water training its open source AI model. With water crises looming on the horizon, we have to interrogate the growth of thirsty technologies like AI. We have to, really struggle with this growth pursuit amidst resource strain and depletion, and the fact that a quarter of humankind lacks access to clean water and sanitation. What are we prioritizing? So again, I'm not an environmentalist, like an environmental professional. So I'm just skimming the surface here of these challenges. But I do want to flag emissions really quickly because AI is contributing to emissions in the environment. So going back to these tech companies like Microsoft, Microsoft has invested in OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT. And while it sings the praises of AI and has integrated it into their product offerings, at the same time, Microsoft has announced that its CO2 emissions have risen nearly 30% since 2020 because of data center expansion. Similarly, with Google. Google's greenhouse gas emissions in 2023 are almost 50% higher than in 2019, largely due to the energy demand tied to data centers. And what I find most disturbing is that Google in July 2024 dropped its carbon neutrality commitment following this AI expansion. So you're seeing a lot of companies, even before the current administration came on the scene, dropping these commitments because of their growing interest and investment in AI. So if we wanted to craft a Catholic response here, we can look back at Antiqua et Nova and see how humans live out their identity as beings made in God's image by keeping and tilling creation. We should be using our intelligence and our skills to care for and develop creation in accordance with God's plan. As the document acknowledges, the current environmental issues associated with AI are complicating this end. So current AI models are environmentally extractive and they're undermining this principle, this care for creation. So we do need to chart more environmentally friendly ways forward with this tech. Okay, so I've talked about not all, but some environmental concerns and rather broadly. So thanks for sticking with me. The church acknowledges that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor overlap, that environmental problems are borne by the world's most vulnerable, that they shoulder these challenges most acutely. So if we're to discuss environmental problems and concerns associated with AI, we must also consider the human costs. So I'm going to talk about two scenarios here. So first, I just want to flag that AI is impacting marginalized communities. And back in 2020, Google had pursued the construction of a data center in Santiago, Chile. And while this was happening, there was a horrific drought in the region, and it was affecting the country's drinking water supply. Residents strongly opposed this project because Google had disclosed, well, hey, this data center is going to consume 7.6 million liters of potable water every day. It's important to acknowledge that Chile's weak environmental regulation infrastructure leaves the country vulnerable to what I would call predatory corporate practices and has resulted in a slew of humanitarian harms that hurt the most vulnerable, specifically indigenous populations. And indigenous territories have historically been impacted by tech companies, and I would even say targeted. So at this moment, I think about how when I do a Google search, an AI bar pops up without my consent and summarizes the information I was looking for. And I do think, is this summarizing bot worth the harms inflicted on vulnerable communities, making them more vulnerable and more marginal? You start to wonder, what's the aim of these tools? Who are these tools benefiting? Who are they harming? I would also say briefly, if we want to talk about marginalized communities further, something to think about, AI is being used in dynamic pricing, not just on rideshare apps, but in grocery stores. This is an avenue for discrimination. AI is also used in military campaigns. This is an avenue for increasing civilian casualties in the global south because AI is not always accurate in determining targets. And I will leave it at that. So if we want to craft a Catholic response again, we can return to Antigua et Nova, which reminds us that the concentration of the power over mainstream AI applications in the hands of a few powerful companies raises significant ethical concerns. So we should have concerns about tech companies that are monopolizing the power here in AI. We should be concerned about AI's integration into our government and funding going towards AI. And we need to think about what communities are being left out of this discussion, what communities are being subordinated by this tech, why are they not at the center? So I see here in these and other ways that AI companies are violating the option for the poor and marginalized. The final example of a human challenge and ethical challenges related to AI has to do with the labor behind AI training. Typically, when we're discussing AI and jobs, you think of how, oh, AI is de-skilling the workforce and might be eliminating jobs in the humanities and communications and the arts. That is true. That is a concern. However, as much as AI enthusiasts talk about AI's transcendence, this tech has to be trained by human hands. There's people behind this. And the people training AI are typically subcontracted laborers in Kenya and other countries in the African continent. These workers are paid anywhere between $1.32 and $2 an hour. And a 60-minute CBS episode had shown that AI OpenAI contracts had initially promised about $12.50 an hour to workers. So you have to wonder, what are the profit margins there? These workers endure other exploitative conditions, and they're also exposed to extremely graphic content as they're training the AI systems and training the algorithm to flag certain materials. So there's been quite a few news reports on this in 2022 and 2024 and ongoing. So if we were to craft a Catholic response, we can return again to Antigua et Nova and see the reminder that human work must not only be for profit, but at the service of the whole human person. If we think back to the experience of the Kenyan AI trainer, is there low pay at the service of the whole human person? Is there exposure to violence without adequate compensation at the service of the whole human worker? We can continue to ask these questions. You also have to imagine, as I said, how these companies, how much they're saving by using subcontracted workers. What other deceptions might be happening? As Antigua et Nova reminds us, AI must never reduce workers to mere cogs in the machine, but by using exploited labor, they're doing just that. They're undermining human dignity, and they're perpetuating undignified working conditions. So when you peel back the curtain on these and other ethical challenges, it feels a little difficult to justify, say, using ChatGPT to generate your grocery list, or using generative AI to come up with a funny meme or a picture to send to someone or post on Facebook, especially when you know that it's gobbling up resources and harming the most vulnerable. And while you don't have to be religious to be concerned about these issues, I do think, and I am biased, of course, that the Catholic tradition's insights are really helpful here, and they're helpful reorienting tools as well. So I just want to offer some takeaways from this presentation. As I've demonstrated drawing from the Catholic tradition, AI systems are complicating humankind's pursuit of the common good, which is theological shorthand for securing the good of the whole human community through how we organize society. If AI is to take on a larger role in our world, then we have some work to do. AI is reflecting a human desire to grow in knowledge and understanding, but also to play God. So we really do need to be pursuing legal stopgaps and protectionist policies, even if current politicians in power are not interested in that and are undermining that work. And as I've hoped to have demonstrated, resources from the Catholic tradition can help us inform our critiques and guide actionable responses. We need to remember that AI is fallible. The people that power AI are also fallible, and power is tempting. It's alluring, it's obscuring all other commitments. And it's not good. It's not good. So my hope is, this presentation can show us how the Catholic tradition is a helpful reorienting tool, but I also want this presentation and the other presentations today to show us that these challenges are in front of us. They are presenting themselves to us today. I did a Google search about 10 minutes before this presentation, and AI popped up. It's on my phone. It's all around me, and it's around you as well. The least we can do is contact people and communicate to our friends and loved ones about this and start to strive for better, not just for ourselves, not just better for our leaders, but also for those who are behind the scenes suffering because of this tech. So I want to close with this question. What future should we strive for? What future do we want? And I have 4 answers. I think we should strive for a future where tech advancements reduce, not contribute to exploitation of people and planet, where we use our intelligence to grow peace and justice in the world, where our leaders prioritize the common good over power grabs, and where we allow ourselves to be inconvenienced for the sake of our neighbor. As Antiqua et Nova reminds us, at its best, human intelligence guides our actions in light of love. It is tenderly formed by human relationships. It is meant for the good of all people. We should hone this intelligence, our collective intelligence, to repair AI harms and chart better ways forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. That was amazingly done in the time that you had. You gave us a really good grounding, understanding of what the issues are. We're going to move now to a much more, I don't want to use the word drill down, into environmental justice issues. So Manan, I'm going to now spotlight you.
Great.
And please get us started. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And just to check, you can see my screen fine?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Let me check the slides are working. Yep. Okay, fantastic. First off, there's some banging in the background. Somebody's fixing something in the office next door. So if that's coming through, I apologize. I hope it's not too loud. Do let me know and I can see what I can do. But I wanted to start off by thanking Kira for her remarks. That was a great setup. And actually, I see a lot of overlap with what I'm going to talk about in kind of generative and interesting ways. I really appreciated the principles drawn from the Catholic tradition of stewardship of creation, human dignity, dignity of work, and options for the poor and marginalized. A lot of principles there overlap with kind of environmental justice 101. So I really appreciated seeing that there. So my name is Manon Donahue. I'm a senior research associate at the Brookings Institution, where I work in the Center for Community Uplift. We largely focus on racial justice and social justice issues My expertise is in climate and environmental justice. And I just want to start by thanking you all for having me. I think this is a great, interesting topic, really important to be talking about. And I'm glad that you've decided or you're interested in thinking about the environmental justice, climate justice implications of this technology as well, which I don't think everybody is thinking about. So I'm glad you've included it here. So today I'm just going to talk about some of the potential impacts of AI on climate and environmental justice, hopefully provide a little bit of a guide for how we could or should be thinking about this, how I'm thinking about this technology. And a lot of this is coming from a report that I put together with my colleagues Joseph Keller and Andre Perry. And that report, we can send it out to you after this session. It's available on the Brookings website. So I'm going to talk a little about impacts and framing how to think about this, but also to ground my presentation. At the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about data centers, which is one physical infrastructure that's revealing of some of the ways that this kind of virtual technology is impacting environmental justice in tangible ways. But first, just a quick level set. This is a rapidly changing technology. One of the real challenges from a research perspective is getting accurate forecasts of including increases in energy demands, how much AI and cloud-based technologies are using up resources. This is a booming, rapidly changing technology. Forecasts range dramatically, and it can be quite challenging to get information. To top this off, from my perspective, there's been little to no overlap in the policy spheres between AI and climate and environmental justice issues. And it's really hard to find resources and information on this. So just to have that in the back of your minds when I'm running through this information, it's likely to change. And this is kind of a snapshot in time. Okay, with that said, I want to start with a definition of climate and environmental justice, because I think we throw this term around without thinking a lot about what it really means. So on the screen here is a definition from the Environmental Protection Agency. They say an equitable outcome is one where everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, national origin, or income, has the right to the same environmental protections and benefits, as well as meaningful involvement in the policies that shape their communities. That's the definition they give for kind of an equitable outcome in terms of environmental climate policy. I would add two important distinctions onto that. It's climate justice, environmental justice is not just one term. It includes a range of different things. Two important elements is distributive justice, which is all about understanding the way that costs and benefits are distributed between different groups, different regions, different race and ethnicity groups, for example. And then procedural justice, which is more about ensuring that the processes for decision making are equitable and fair, and that different groups have equal opportunity to participate in decisions that affect their communities. So, they're two different kind of understandings of justice. Sometimes they go together, sometimes they don't. But it's important because it changes the way that you think about those issues. So, given that, why does it matter? Why are we talking about this? Why have you invited me here today? Is climate and environmental justice really connected to AI? What's the point here? And so to get at that, I want to raise two important points, kind of overarching high-level points that make it clear, at least to me, why I think this conversation is worth having. The first is that the potential increases in energy demands and thus also emissions from AI, they're potentially immense. And Kira already raised this in her presentation. I said estimates are unreliable. One of the more attention-grabbing estimates that I saw last year was that if AI were used for all Google search results, that would require roughly the annual energy consumption equal to that used by the country of Ireland. So again, this is I don't want to make it out like that's a set kind of a number, but just to throw out the potential kind of forecasts of total increase in energy demands are really, really large. One of the usual rebuttals you hear to this is that, okay, that's fine because we're going to invest in renewable technologies and that will offset that whole increase in energy use. So, scale up renewables, and it doesn't matter if we're increasing energy demand, because that's all going to be absorbed by the increase in renewable power. And that's not quite accurate to say. At least at the international scale, we've seen, and that's what this graph is showing here, that over time, despite increased investment in renewable technologies, total energy use has continued to increase over time. What that means is that even though you're having new kind of more environmentally sustainable technologies being used, you're still having this increase in throughput. So that's how much resources are running through your energy systems. The more energy demand increases, the more intensive supply chains are becoming that are supporting that increase in energy demands. There's also emissions embedded in those supply chains, as well as demand for other resources, some of which, as Kira's already highlighted, come from conflict-affected areas, kind of dubious sources that have these potential moral failures in those supply chains as well. So that's the first point. Second point is that across the US's history, talking now less at an international level, more at a national level, the US has had a poor policy history of regulating for distributional justice. While there's been a lot of good, especially environmental policies that have on average made environments better for your average American, still distributional impacts have worsened. So a good kind of an instructive example here is the Clean Air Act. This was some landmark legislation within the US that helped to lower average exposure of Americans to environmental pollutants. And it did that. But over the same period, you saw an increasing of worse environmental outcomes within certain neighborhoods. And these neighborhoods were largely non-white majority neighborhoods. So this graph on the slide here, you can see that neighborhoods with a higher proportion of people of color, of non-white people living in those neighborhoods, are on average more exposed to environmental pollution than majority white neighborhoods. So, upon this background in the US, this kind of an unequal background, the introduction of new technologies, new policies to regulate those technologies, without thinking about this kind of unjust landscape, those policies can end up entrenching and reproducing inequities. Now if you're finding yourself lost, I want to offer up a slight reframe. Kira already touched on this, just to clarify things further. How we can think about what AI is and how it's having impacts in a physical space. So what's important to me here, at least as an environment and climate justice expert, it's not so much the idea of these technologies being morally ambiguous or destructive. Indeed, there's many potential benefits from using AI to apply to solving climate challenges. But what I'm more interested in or worried about is the material reality of these technologies. So, as we said in our report, despite their operation in a virtual space, AI and cloud-based technologies, they have considerable tangible effects. They intensify greenhouse gas emissions, consume increasing amounts of energy, and require larger quantities of natural resources. So in other words, despite being, to the average person, largely a virtual technology, they exist in the physical space as well. They require a bunch of infrastructures to support that virtual technology that the average person doesn't see, but that is nevertheless having an environmental impact. So to go into more detail, I think there are at least 3 questions worth asking when it comes to AI and climate and environmental justice. The first is, what will be the impacts on energy use and throughput? Could AI's demands for inputs like water box out other uses of those resources in the region where the physical infrastructure is based? And in so doing, how will that change the average costs to the people living in those places to also access those resources? Related to that and scaling up to the international level, what will this technology mean for the intensity of extractive supply chains that are taking the resources needed to embed in these technologies. Second, important question to me, which groups have access, ownership, and control over these technologies? How are these technologies used, for whom, and for what purposes? And third, what does the technology mean for global emissions and efforts to decarbonize internationally? At a high level, if these technologies are increasing energy demands, could that mean a longer timeline to decarbonize economies? Already I'm seeing stories come out linking AI to decisions to turn back on coal power, for example, in certain localities. It's a technology or a resource we're trying to phase out. It's really important for emissions trajectories. We often think of greenhouse gas emissions as a global problem, and they are, but they really have local impacts as well. For the people living alongside fossil fuel economies, living alongside the industries that are extracting fossil fuels, a longer time horizon to decarbonize ultimately means bigger environmental impacts, longer time of exposure for the people living in those communities. So that's something worth thinking about as well. Now to kind of move into the latter half of this presentation, I want to think about some of these questions in relation to data centers. So, at a high level, a data center is just a building that houses computer systems that support AI cloud-based technologies. They're really the physical infrastructure that's needed for this kind of virtual technology to work seamlessly. Data centers have a high demand for resources. They emit a lot of heat and they require a lot of cooling, so particularly need water. Data centers, we've seen rapid investment in data centers within the US. You might have heard of Data Center Alley. I'm based in DC. Data Center Alley is around a couple of counties over in Virginia. In 2023, the latest estimates I saw is there's about 118 data centers in that area. So just to give you an insight into how quickly this technology is being invested in. And importantly, there's little public information available on where data centers are being built, which communities they're in, and how they're benefiting those communities where they're being built. Most of this information, it exists, but it's held by the companies building these data centers and is only available at their discretion. So, as a researcher, it's even quite hard to understand exactly what the impacts of something like data center is having on local economies and communities. So, to go into more detail, the data center, they're really tethering this idea of AI to places. Data centers exist within places, and as such, they're dependent upon the local energy and resources available within those places. So, I already said that data centers, they require a lot of cooling. If you're putting a data center in Phoenix, it's going to require a lot more investment in cooling technologies and demand a lot more water, for example, than if it's in Detroit, Michigan, where your weather is a lot cooler. So where we're placing these things really matters. So to the impacts they're having on local regions. Also, they're drawing, where they're based, they're going to be drawing on local power sources as well. So their impact on emissions, whether they're drawing on a renewable power source versus a fossil fuel-based energy grid is going to be completely different. Another related point here is that data centers, there's this idea that maybe they're drivers of local economic growth, that they're creating jobs in the regions where they're based. I'm yet to see any evidence of that. My understanding is that data centers create few local jobs, and I'm also yet to see any kind of demographic studies of the social and economic characteristics of the communities where data centers are located. These are important questions. They might not immediately seem relevant to environmental justice, but they are in the sense that they're about the distribution of the costs and benefits of this technology. If they are generating benefits for a local community, there's more of a coherent logic to also being distributed with the costs, the local costs of having those technologies in a region. This is all about trade-offs. One final, and I'm reaching time here, one final point I want to raise is the implications of this technology for where and how knowledge is stored, accessed, and used. Again, coming back to questions of ownership and control over algorithmic-based technologies. For communities like Indigenous communities, there's a question as well of data sovereignty. These are sensitive pieces of information that concern, culture, for example, for Indigenous communities. And if that's being used to train AI models, you want to be making sure that's done in a way in which those communities are benefiting. So I just want to close here briefly by raising some policy questions. From an environmental climate justice perspective, these are the questions that I'm asking. Where are data centers located currently? Where should they be located? What are their current impacts on energy demand and resource use? And based upon the mix of resources across the US, where should data centers be located from a policy perspective so that they're most efficient and lowest impact? So I'll close there. More questions than answers from me, but keen to hear you all weigh in. And thank you very much.
Thank you. You raised a lot of questions and some of things that I had not even thought of. The Indigenous knowledge base question had not popped in my mind. So thank you for bringing that up. We are running a few minutes late, so questions will probably be quite short. I did say that if you have a question for a panelist to let us know who it is, I will then follow up with them to get responses and send it in a follow-up email from the Covenant. We will now move to Scott Hurd, who has a tangible way for us to respond during Lent, in fact, which is a great time to do this. Let me put Scott up.
Wonderful. And thank you, Paz. And I'm going to be quick and let me see if I can successfully share my slides here. And let's see. I'm going to switch this. How does that look? Okay. Is that okay?
We are still seeing that column to your side. You need to switch that.
All right. So how's that?
Not yet.
All right.
You did go to display settings and you changed it
Yeah,
earlier.
I did that. And let's
see if you can do it, because right now we see your notes to the side.
Right. Okay. Screen sharing has stopped. All right. Let me try this one more time and share my screen. And there we go. And I'm going to switch this and let's see. This isn't very successful, is it? So
Try from beginning, so see what happens.
yeah, it is from beginning. Do you not see that? Hold on.
We're still seeing your side, so you might go there from the beginning, slideshow from beginning.
Yep. Okay. And then display settings.
Right. There you need to switch that.
There. And I've done it.
There you go.
Got it. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So as you said, Paz, I'm going to make an appeal that for this Lent, which begins in 2 weeks, folks might want to consider giving up what I call needless AI for Lent. And as our presenters have already stated, AI does have some great potential benefits, but also, as they've stated, there are plenty of needless and frivolous uses that can harm our environment and create various sorts of injustices. And what do I mean by needless and frivolous? Allow me a few examples. And there we are. Here we have a picture of Shrimp Jesus. And if you were paying attention last April, this had it's 15 seconds of fame on Facebook, where there were all these AI-generated images of Jesus fused together with shellfish. And on Facebook, there were lots of comments about these images made by bots. So you had bots creating images that were commented on by bots. And this is just a rather egregious manifestation of the fact that 34 million images are created with artificial intelligence each day. A lot of them are for personal amusement. You're making silly memes or little pictures. A fair number are porn. And this proliferation of junk is now commonly referred to as slop. And that was the runner-up for the Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year. So needless and frivolous, there is a lot of slop. Here we have the first AI-generated book right after ChatGPT kind of was manifested upon the world. The little book is Alice and Sparkle. The images are AI generated. The text was AI generated. My point being that in 2023, Amazon got so concerned that AI generated so-called books were flooding its Kindle Direct Publishing marketplace. And they were concerned that this was crowding out human created books. And so they created a cap, which means that individual AI users can only add 3 new AI books to Kindle per day, which still allows them over 1,000 titles a year. So you have all of these AI books harming the environment. No one is going to read it, crowding out human authors, more needless and frivolous AI content. And here, little picture of a dog. I saw an ad for a new Motorola Razr phone, and it was talking about how Google's Gemini AI family of multimodal AI tools were integrated in this new phone. And in the ad, what example did Motorola give as to what benefit this AI would be? It says, "Help me write a thank you note to my dog groomer." And I thought, if anyone can type in that prompt into their phone, they are certainly capable of writing a thank you note to the dog groomer on their own. More needless and frivolous AI content. And so my appeal for Lent is to consider giving up, if you're engaged in this sort of use of AI for this season. It is inspired by Laudato Si, and here I have some quotes here from that encyclical. And Pope Francis talks about the nobility of little daily actions, which can really bring out the best in us. They can help change the world. And you can see further at the very bottom there, restore our sense of self-esteem, enable us to live more fully, and feel that life on earth is worthwhile. Also, for those of you who are Catholics, we are in the middle of a Jubilee year, the Jubilee of Hope. And there was an encouragement made for the pilgrims during this Jubilee year to consider abstaining from use of different apps, media, social networks, etc., as a way to open oneself up to the work of the Holy Spirit during this Jubilee year. And here, just another quote by Pope Francis, where he talks about us working together to generate resistance to the assault of the technocratic paradigm. And I think in light of some recent political decisions that we have witnessed, there might be a desire to do something to respond to these actions. For instance, we recently saw the new administration signing an order to bring back plastic straws. There's a claim that the paper ones explode. We have a quote here that plastic is not going to affect a shark as much as they are munching their way through the ocean. It's a direct quote. Contrasted with what Pope Francis said in 2021, don't throw plastic into the sea. We heard earlier about the Paris meeting just a few weeks ago, the AI Paris Action Summit, which the United States refused to sign. A bit of a contrast. We had Vice President Vance saying that the policy of the United States is to pursue pro-growth AI policies, and they should be prioritized over safety. And that's a direct contrast to what Pope Francis has been saying for a number of years since Laudato Si, that there needs to be strong international regulation on new technology, including artificial intelligence. And then finally, as I think probably everyone knows, the U.S. recently made the decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. And of course, Pope Francis has been encouraging world leaders to actively be a part of that agreement. So here are 10 ways that I suggest that during Lent, if you wish to do this, you might be able to give up needless and frivolous AI. I'll go through the list. You can delete or disable AI-centric apps on your phone. If you have one of those, ChatGPT, if you have a chatbot, character AI replica, give it up for Lent. Write for yourself. Don't have Gemini write the thank you note to the dog groomer. Write your own thank you note to the dog groomer. You're going to save the environment. You're going to avoid brain rot. Don't make silly AI-generated images. Nobody really needs it. You're just contributing to slop. If you're a gamer, there are a lot of AI-powered multiplayer games. Give it up for Lent. Go to trivia night at the local watering hole. Play a board game. Don't use AI tools for internet searches. A ChatGPT search uses 10 times as much energy as a standard one, as kind of an old school Google search. If you have a self-driving vehicle, and I put that in inverted commas, you can disable some of those features. Okay, they're not using AI. If you are using AI to generate and narrate bedtime stories for your kids, turn off the nanny bot, read a book with your kids yourself. It's going to be a lot better outcome in the long term. Artists and creative are really concerned about being marginalized by AI. Patronize the arts, go to a concert, buy a book. If you have AI tools that are being sort of suggested for you at work, I mean, you can't log on to Adobe or Zoom or Slack, and they're like, try this new AI add-in. Don't do it during Lent. You're going to be just fine. And then finally, if you are a church leader, you can encourage a Lenten AI detox. Get this out to your people. This is something to think about as a way to care for creation and avoid some of the injustices that our other presenters mentioned. And if you have other ideas about how one might give up AI for Lent, please drop it in the chat. And pause, I hope that was under 7 minutes. That's as fast as I can talk.
It was great.
Great.
But we are almost at 2 p.m. Therefore, questions are going to have to be done offline. I will try to respond to them and get the panelists to let me know the best answer sometimes. One that has come up over and over. How do you how do you disable all these automatic things? If the panelists have the information about how to do that, that would be great. I can then pass that on because that came up over and over. We're almost at 2 o'clock. So first I want to thank Kira, Manan, Scott for your participation. I want to thank all of you who attended today. The recording will be sent to you as well as the slides and any of the links to articles, reports that were mentioned, I will also try to include in the follow-up. Thank you, everybody. Sad that we don't have a lot of time, but it is like that when there's a lot of great information. I just want to point out that I came upon this issue because I am from Chile, and back in 2020, everybody in Chile was talking about this issue. Nobody in the US was. And little by little, it has become more of an issue here in the US. And I think that the faith community, the Catholic Church, has a lot to say at this point in the US society. So let us hope that our voices are heard. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much.